making some fun clusters with the Pumpkin Harvest Kit, and I am using some coffee dyed paper as my base like I usually do. Sometimes I use a different base, but I tend to use the coffee dyed paper mostly. So I'm just taking these book pages and tearing them down. A lot of these were pages that I had already ripped up for a project, and I had these extra little strips here, and I thought these would be perfect for these clusters because I didn't want to throw them away. I really love the paper and the font on them and some of the images. A lot of the images do get cut up or cut off, but or not cut off, but covered up, but I still like how it looks. And so I just kind of tore a bunch of pieces, mixed up some of the papers. Some of it's from, I think, Tracy Fox Love Junk Journals. I think is that paper in the bottom left. I have some graph paper. I have paper that I dyed that was from a cookbook. That's the really dark paper that I'm using right now. And like I said, the, what's it called? The dictionary paper. I am going to ink around all the edges of these. I just use my glue stick to stick all this down. I do fast forward this part or at least skip over it because you don't need to watch me gluing all these pieces down. And that is my bases. So now I'm going to go through the paper and the embellishments, and I'm going to figure out what I want to put next. So now I'm just pulling out some of this pretty paper that has the leaves and the pumpkins on it, some other paper that I thought would look good as collage elements, and I'm just going to start ripping them up and just layering them on. I really like the contrast of the golds and greens in these papers, and I thought they looked really nice and they really pop off these pages. So you can see here I pulled some of the ones with the sunflowers and the pumpkins and the leaves. Some are these more muted papers here, and I like how that looks. It's more of a kind of like almost like a sepia kind of look. It does have black in it, but it's a much more brownish black. I'm just kind of fitting these in wherever I think it's going to look nice. And I just rip them down until I'm happy with them. So once I'm happy with the layers, I will glue everything down. I do ink around all of them. I do want to add some fabric and some other textures to these. So you're going to see here that I'm going to add a few bits of cheesecloth and some ruffles that I made. This is just some, I don't know, what is it, like kind of like a ribbonish thing? I don't know. That came, I think, off a package. I think it was off of a comforter or some kind of blanket that we just bought. And it was perfect. I love the texture. I thought it was a little bit too white though, so I added a little bit of distress ink to it. I'm going to cut up some more of this cheesecloth, see where else I can kind of stick it. And I just kind of haphazardly chop this up. I want it to look messy, so I don't try to make it very nice or anything like that. I just kind of chop it up to the size that I want to use, tuck it in or fold it out or do whatever I want to do to make it the look I want. And I just really like the texture it gives, but it's light and it doesn't add a lot of weight to it, but it gives a nice little texture with the openness of the cheesecloth. So I'm just going to keep playing. I'm just going to keep playing here, laying it out like I want it. And then once I'm happy with all of this, I will end up gluing all this down as well. And I tend to kind of glue in layers. I either will lay everything out and not glue anything, or I will glue like the background pieces down and then not glue these other pieces down until I get it the way I like it. Just kind of depends on the mood I'm in and how I want it to look. I do it a little bit differently each time, but a lot of times I do like to wait and glue it down at the end because sometimes I want to tuck little pieces behind the other pieces that I've already put down. So here you can see I'm just adding some book pages in a couple of places that I thought it looked like it needed something else, seeing where else I might need some color. I thought with this little pear it needed a little bit more color here, so I'm going to rip up some of this paper with the leaves on it, and then I'm going to ink around all the edges. That's what it looks like. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine. I've sewn it all up using a brown thread. And now that it's all sewn, I'm going to look at my little fussy cut images and add them on. And I always do this at the end. I do this after I have done all the stitching. And you can really do it either way. A lot of times I want these die cuts and things like that to be over the stitching, so that's why I do the stitching first. I like to have it a little bit in the background, not necessarily in the forefront, but definitely you can do whatever you think is going to look best on your layout. So I'm just rifling through these different cutouts and adding them where I think they will look nice. this collection, this printable set is really, really nice. I love all the images. There are some great images. I think I got maybe one of the fussy cut kits too. I can't quite remember. Love the feathers. They're so pretty. I think they're going to look nice there on that cluster. So you can just see here, I'm kind of going in, seeing what I like. I auditioned several things. I just kind of play around until I find something that I think is going to look nice. Sometimes I leave it the way I had it the first time. Sometimes I will play with it a lot. I try to make relatively quick decisions, but sometimes it's a little hard to, choose what you want to put on these. But I try to get through this pretty quickly so that I'm not sitting here for 3 days trying to figure out what to layer on. So you can see here, I'm just taking some of the little leaves and I'm adding those on in a little cluster, and I like how that's looking. And then I use these clusters for either just embellishments where they just kind of sit on the page. Sometimes I use it as a tuck spot. Sometimes I use them as little toppers. It just kind of depends. I use them all different ways. Just kind of depends on the page and what I'm feeling at the time. This is some tatting that I thought was really pretty. I like how it's got the tan and the gold in it. And this is some more, a little bit bigger tatting that I'm going to be adding. I love all the texture and dimension that these trims and things give. So I do like to add these to my clusters. I think you get a lot of bang for the buck. I mean, these are pretty small clusters, and I think they just really add a whole lot to the page. And I love making them like this on this 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I find that doing it this way rather than trying to do a cluster at a time works a lot better. I think it just lays nicer because it's on this bigger piece of paper, so it's easier to work with. You can mass make them, so I'm making several of them at one time. And it just, I don't know, it works a lot better than doing them individually. So I tend to make all of my clusters like this, where they're on this bigger piece of paper, and then I'll rip them out at the end. So that's a nice helpful hint for you guys if you're struggling with clusters, especially if you're doing them for a bigger journal and you want to make a bunch at the same time. I think this is a great way to do it. I don't know. I'm so glad. I think I saw either Gail Augustinelli or Rachel at Roxy Creations or somebody doing this, and I have been doing this ever since because it is so nice and I really enjoy the process. This is probably one of my favorite things to actually do is making the clusters. I do like putting the album pages together, but I think making the clusters is probably one of my favorites when I make these journals. So I'm just trimming that coffee paper out so it is not so thick around the edges, and I just do that to what I think is going to look nice. Now I'm going to lay everything out, and I want to add a bit more to these. I'm going to add some sequins. I don't remember if I add any buttons or not, but I am going to add a bit more. I thought they looked still a little bit too flat, so I'm going to take these really pretty copper sequins. I believe I got these at Michael's. They came in a variety pack with some different variations of like gold and copper colors. So I'm just going to take my little tweezers and kind of play around and see where I like them. A lot of times I will put 3 on each cluster. I think the 3 looks nice. It helps balance everything out. Sometimes I'll put less, but a lot of times I do put at least 3 on each cluster. And I will not put them on all of these. I do, when I use the sequins, I do like to tuck them in. I think they look nice where they just have a little sparkle peeking out rather than having them on the top of the layer. I think they look nice when they're tucked into the layers of the clusters. Sometimes I'll put them on top, but a lot of times I do try to kind of tuck them into the little areas. So I'm really liking how those are looking. It's giving a little bit of sparkle to these clusters. I think I'm going to put a couple more on here. And then I'm just going to use my Scotch Quick Dry with my fine liner bottle to add these on here. Another thing that works really well with sequins is glue dots. Sequins are a little bit tricky sometimes to add on, so sometimes I'll use the glue dots instead of the liquid adhesive. When they're tucked into the folds and things like that, it seems like the liquid adhesive works fine, but if they're going to be on the top of the page where they're going to maybe be easily knocked, I recommend using like the little glue dots. So you can see there on the turkey, I tried to put another one, a third one on, and it just wasn't working, so I just left it with 2. Even though I guess there is rules, you don't necessarily have to follow them. You just gotta, what I do is what I think looks nice. I like odd numbers, so I think that looks nice most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't work, so you just have to figure out what works and what you think looks best. This one looked like it was a little plain. I hadn't put a die cut or anything on it yet, so I am going to put this little leaf. I like the green. It brings out the green from the little collage paper and adds a balance to that. So you can see here, this is all done. All the clusters are complete. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you have a great day, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up, and if you're not already, please subscribe. Thank you guys so much, and I will talk to you again very soon. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.